Hugo, thanks for coming on, mate. Nice to see you.
Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah, mate, we're just trying to kind of understand how we've got here, who to blame, we can do to save the situation. First of all, we'll get into the relegation talk in a minute. I want to get your reaction to what Frank is saying when he says. He was asked, why aren't Spurs showing signs of attacking patterns of play? And he says it's the injuries, and they have to be massively taken into consideration. And I haven't really said it too much, but everyone can see the impact. So he's kind of said, look, I've held back on putting the blame on that, but now I've got to come clean and tell you it's the injuries that are causing this. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, first of all, I don't usually like calling in after games like this because there's not much to add to the conversation other than negativity. For me, Frank is he's just going through the motions, and he's commonly deflected to the fact that we finished 17th last season when we've had poor results, and I think this is just another variation of that where he's now deflecting to injuries. Because the attacking patterns of play were shocking before, but particularly, the emphasis is on going down the wings and getting crosses into the box, and we've got no wingers. And his best winger for a long time now has been Wilson Odobert, who in 24 games in the league has got 2 assists. So he hasn't got the quality in the front line anyway. Combined with the fact that we've got an incompetent recruitment team, and we've made the exact same mistakes as we did last season. I think that for me that's the biggest kind of takeaway from this whole thing is that we're in the exact same position last season. We've made the same mistakes. We haven't learned at all.
What I hear when I hear Frank blaming injuries for not having any attacking patterns of play, he's basically saying we no longer have Kudus who could beat 3-4 players at a time, and that's it. And that's what I was relying on before. And without that player who can beat 3 players in one fell swoop, I can't do anything. But for you, in terms of today, similar pattern to what we've seen in a lot of recent games, isn't it? Horrible first half, should have been 2 or 3 down, really got away with it. Bit of fight in the second half, but wasn't ultimately enough. Like, is that how you analysed it?
No, I think today was particularly woeful. I think in other games, I was at the City game. You look at Villa in the Cup. In a lot of these games, we've actually played well for periods of time. Not consistently for the half, but we've actually played good. And maybe, against City, we could have got a winner. Maybe, if Odeberg knocks that chance in. So, you look at it and say today, I don't even think we played well. In the period of time where we were on top, I don't even think we were good. I think we were actually quite poor still. And we we got the equaliser from a corner and then just completely fell apart to concede the second goal. And I also just think, individual performances, I think a lot of the players have let Frank down today as well. Some of those guys went hiding. I look at Yves Bissouma, just an absolutely disgusting performance. I don't think anyone really showed up today. And also, he's had to play Conor Gallagher as a right winger for the entire second half. So it's a combination of a terrible game plan, a terrible attitude to the game, and ill-equipped squad to kind of manage and deal with the opponent and the opponents ahead. So I don't think it was a good fighting second half performance. I think it was actually still really woeful. And from Newcastle's second goal, we did nothing. We were absolutely disgusting. So it was a really, really, really bad performance.
I don't disagree at all.
No, sorry, I thought you wanted to say
that was spot on.
Yeah,
Hugo.
absolutely. But what so the consequence of that, we were at one point tonight within 3 points of West Ham in the relegation zone. Thankfully, United scored a last gasp equaliser, and the pressure in terms of the gap between us and the relegation zone, a bit is 5 points now, not as bad as it could have been. Does that goal change much for you when you're thinking about the threat of relegation?
Not at all. It's we're still very much on, and the point isn't what the gap is between us and West Ham, is whether we're going to win any games, and I just can't see it. I can't see it. The run that we've just had, the sort of 10-game run of Sunderland and Brentford and Bournemouth and West Ham and Burnley, he's not won any of those games. So where are these 3 points coming from? Just in terms of the sack or no sack, he's got to go. He absolutely has to go. For me, I think the ownership it's a weird one because they haven't even backed him. They haven't backed him in January. They've not gone and brought him.
So true.
They've not gone and bought him even just a couple of extra squad players just to say, hey, cut the BS. It's not our fault. Now, Frank, go do your thing. They haven't even done that. They've just completely left him to hang out and dry. And that's kind of why I do think that they're going to keep him for the Arsenal game because they just can't face the music of, because they have to make a choice. So if they get rid of him, then there's going to be this long period before arguably the biggest game of the season, where there's going to be no manager and all the eyes are going to be on the ownership and the decision making. And also, for them to sack Frank, it shows that their entire infrastructure, their entire methodology, this whole new process of long-term thinking is completely defunct, and it sets a precedent that moving forward, they can't be trusted. So they're really screwed. But they have to make a choice. For me, he has to go in immediately. I don't want Heitinga. For me, I think that the defending has actually gotten much worse since Matt Wells has departed the club, and Heitinga has come in as the defensive coordinator. I think our defense has actually looked even worse. Like from set pieces, we're a mess. From corners, we're a mess. Our defending at the back stick is completely become undone. We look like a defensive mess, and I think it's coincided with Heitinga's appointment. Actually, we've looked disgraceful defensively. At least before that, we were a little bit solid at times. I think since Heitinga's come in, our defense has actually fallen apart massively. And so I personally really don't want Heitinga. I would give it to Mason probably. Out of all the options, I'd probably give it to Mason. I would love Redknapp. Redknapp's my favourite Spurs manager ever. But let's be realistic. The guy's 97, and it'd be a bit.
That's why you bring in Redknapp with a younger person by his side. So if you brought in Redknapp and Sheringham, something like that, or you brought in Redknapp and Robbie Keane, or Redknapp and Mason, for example, that would make more sense because I think Redknapp, he's a man motivator. He hasn't lost that. He's still got it. But you're right. He's pushing on a few years. So if you bring in someone a little bit younger to work with him, I think then it can work, Hugo.
To be honest with you, I would love to see that. I would actually love to see that. I'd actually pay money to see that. I'd go to the games just to see Redknapp in the dugout. The reason why I say Mason is because this board are not the type of board to do something above and beyond out of the box to fix this problem. They're a board that's going to pick a very predictable, a very safe, a very pragmatic option to resolve this if they do decide to get rid of Frank.
But that won't solve it, though. Did you think that will solve it, though? I think that would just be an extension of the existing issue.
You mean what? To replace Frank with an interim?
Yeah, like you said, they would pick another pragmatic, safe option manager. Is that what you were saying?
In terms of if they remove him and go for the interim route, not for the permanent route, but for an interim route to remain the season, I think they would go for someone who's an active manager. I think Mason kind of ticks those boxes in terms of that he's an active manager, and also he's known at the club. He was a player at the club. He understands the club better than all these other idiots, at least. So I think in terms of the most realistic candidates, I think on their list, he's probably.
But he just
probably be at the top. I don't know.
See, he got sacked at Brentford, Hugo. He got sacked, not Brentford, at West Brom. He did a bad job there. He's not.
But Carrick got sacked to Borough, didn't he?
Yeah, but Carrick did 2 very good years there. And what happened to Marco Carrick was they loaned out his 6 best players, and it just began to unravel around him. Look, we need a manager that's going to come in and win us 3 or 4 games. That's what we need. Whether he loses 8 but wins 4, job done.
And do you think, Hugo, just getting a new manager and getting the shackles off, that's going to get us the results we need?
Yeah, I don't think in terms of an interim, it needs to be tactics, and it needs to be X's and O's, and it needs to be a top tactician. I think it just needs to be someone that's recognised at the club that can just lift the mood a little bit and get the players motivated. Because I don't think it's going to come down to tactic. It comes down to effort and fight, and that's what we're in right now. We're in a scrap. So for me, I think part of the problem is Frank's over tactic, over complication of some of the approach going into games, and I think that's led to some of the confusion and the do we attack, do we defend? What you've got is a situation of a manager who's not at the level, but also is at a club that expects a high degree of footballing level, with a combination of a disastrous medical department and an ownership that also doesn't get the club either. So you've got this cocktail of Frank, he's not the worst manager in the Premier League, but in the environment he's in, he's become the worst because the infrastructure around him has completely let him down. So the whole match is wrong. It's not because Frank's tactics, for me anyway, it's not because Frank's not setting us up right. I think the entire sort of infrastructure around him has let him down completely, and that comes down to recruitment, injuries, squad depth, and also the expectation of the fans and the club. That's what creates this atmosphere where if you draw against Sunderland, they're booing you, even though on paper it's not the worst result in the world. That's what creates this atmosphere where you've only won 2 games in 17, even though you haven't got the worst squad in the Premier League. It's this disgusting cocktail of things.
I disagree a bit on this one. I actually think he's tactically inept in key moments. For me, that Super Cup final, 2-0 up, was a glorious position with 10 minutes to go. To not bring on all the defenders you had on the bench and bring on Archie Gray and then take off the only outlet should you have an out ball, I thought invited the inevitable. Then I saw against Arsenal, we waved the white flag as we walked on the pitch. That tactical idea to just park the bus against them was mental to me. Then it was the Nottingham Forest game where we're 2-0 down, and he'd already proven that he can be 2-0 down and come back because he did it against Brighton. But against Brighton, he went for it. We were 2-0 down against Forest with 35 minutes to go. And what does he do? He brings on Paulinho and Ben Davies and not one attacking option. And then he wonders why we lost. And then you've got, some of the recent performances you've seen where it's just defend, kick, pass it long, defend. A lot of people, because I don't really watch or observe Frank much over the last 3-4 years, Hugo, but a lot of people called him the professor, a tactical genius. I'll be honest with you, I think he's an average manager. In my opinion, he's an average manager that will punch above his weight at an average club. So he'll go to an average club and punch above his weight. I don't think tactically he's got it for the level that we as a club want to be at, in my opinion. I think if you chuck £400 million at him, he'll get you top 4, because I saw Ole Gunnar Solskjaer get second placed in the league when he spent 400 million, and he's an average manager. But beyond that, he's not the level for me, from what I've seen, from what I've observed. And he has got a tough gig. That I agree with you, Hugo. He's got a very tough gig. I do agree with you on that.
I agree that he's not at the level. And what I would say, to just caveat what you've said about his tactics, is that obviously, when the results don't go your way, and when our moments of transition, when we win the ball up, you look at the second goal today with Gallagher. We win the ball from a corner, and Gallagher's got a 3v2 or a 4v3.
Yeah.
Pass option, and he completely fluffs the pass, and then Newcastle go and score. In those situations, it's very easy to say that the tactics don't work, and what's the plan here when it doesn't work. I would also say the Super Cup, you can't really blame him for the Super Cup, because we were 2-0 up in a game that we had no right being 2-0 up, probably because of the tactics that he, the structure and stuff. So that's the only thing I would say. And also, at a different club, the style of play that he implements works, and it doesn't stick out, and it isn't jarring for the fan base. So that's why I caveated by saying specifically at Tottenham, that's why the combination of his style is particularly bad, because you have to think as well, the fans in the stadium, they go they go flat for large sections of the games, and we don't believe. It's not the same at Brentford. It's not the same at Crystal Palace. It's not the same at Everton. The expectation's not the same. So that's the only thing I would say.
Could I counter this?
Yeah.
I want to counter this. If we're 2-0 up with 10 minutes to go in the cup final, and Conte Mourinho manager, I bet you we win that game if them two were in charge. And this thing about Frank, it works at other teams. When he came to Spurs, I asked myself, what have you actually done in football? And his best achievement is to get Brentford into the Premier League and be mid-table. Ivan Toney, Norgard, Visser and Mbeumo, 4 very good players have left Brentford. Look what Keith Andrews is doing. Now, I would say he is better than Frank with what I'm seeing him do. Do you think that's a fair comment?
I think in terms of Keith Andrews, what I would say is that Frank has left Brentford. He's left Brentford in a decent position. He's come to Tottenham. He's the levels have dropped down to what we were last season, and the Brentford team haven't really skipped a beat. I would argue that the situation at Brentford, the infrastructure, the integrated recruitment of stylistic players, and the consistent style of play, and the consistent understanding from top to bottom is also a big contributing factor as to why Brentford are in the top 7. It's not necessarily that Keith Andrews is.
So why didn't Frank get them top 7?
Well, I think he
had better players.
Sure, but that's. I mean, I don't know, but they're clearly moving forward in some trajectory, and they haven't taken a step backwards or a step sideways. Keith Andrews has kind of come in and kind of carried on the mantle, as it were. They haven't changed their style of play. They haven't changed fundamentally what they're going for as a football club. They haven't changed their transfer policy. They haven't changed their managerial infrastructure. He's kind of just, Frank has run and kept Brentford in the Premier League so that Keith Andrews can kind of inherit a team, and he's done very well. But I think it's a little bit I don't think you can isolate the two and say, well, Frank's 16th and Keith Andrews is 7th, therefore there's like this huge gulf.
No, I'm comparing Keith Andrews' work at Brentford with a weaker team than Frank had, and the job Frank did at Brentford when he had a stronger team. That's what I'm comparing. I think Keith Andrews is doing a better job at Brentford with less compared to Frank, yet we've made Frank our manager.
Sure. I think you might be on that could be a good point. I couldn't tell you if I think Frank's doing a bad job and Keith Andrews doing a great job. So it's difficult to really compare the two. They're different situations, in my opinion. But Brentford have been, but also Frank has taken 4 points off Keith Andrews this season. So it's a weird one. I couldn't say. It's a weird one, the consistency and the consistent performance level is clearly not just. It's just not.
And Ange beat Frank 3 times out of 4 and drew once. Makes sense of it, right? Makes sense of it.
So it's just.
No, Hugo, I think you make some really good points, man. If I'm honest with you, I think what you're saying, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it.
Do you think? I understand your opinion. Frank needs to go. We need to make a change. At the moment, Frank's saying he's convinced he's going to be in charge of the Arsenal game. There is, he seems calm about the situation. Do you categorically say if we keep Frank, we will go down? Is that your opinion?
No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say categorically we would go down if we keep Frank. It depends. There needs to be a moment. And there's been so many of these moments where games, is this the game where we turn it on and we make a comeback win, where we actually do it in the second half? I think those opportunities have been there consistently through this run of games that we've had, and those chances will still be there, because Frank's right. The players that he has at his disposal are good enough to stay up. I don't think it's categoric that we go down, but I think it's absolutely necessary that we make a change, because for me, I just think he's just completely lost control of the situation. He's just completely lost control of the squad. I just don't think anybody in that team really knows what they're doing, has any belief in what they're doing, and the second half kind of comebacks are just so symptomatic of just like, it reminds me of when Conte was sacked and we were like, floating in 8th place, and we went on a really bad run to end the season. But we had these games, if you remember, came back from 2-0 down against Man United, came back from 3-0 down at Anfield, and then threw it away. It's like these guys are just running around like headless chickens and trying to make it happen. And so that's going to be, that might just be enough to just keep the engine going. But does it mean that Frank should keep his job? Probably not. I've seen this before with these Tottenham teams where, we do have a bit of pride. We do have fight. We aren't just going to give up. We are going to keep going at it, and we have been going at it. But we're just ill-equipped. We're just ill-equipped at the moment to get these results. And I do think there needs to be a change. A change needs to happen. If it's Redknapp, I will renew my membership. I'll pay top money to come back to the stadium and watch that, because I don't think it comes down to Redknapp doesn't need to get in there with a whiteboard and start drawing up diagrams of where people need to be. I think he just needs to tell the players, look, go out there and do your thing. Go out there and do the thing and show them why you're a Tottenham Hotspur player. You know, because there are good players in that squad, and it's just I think it's mostly a confidence issue rather than like tactics or player quality. I do think it's a confidence issue.
Do you know what Redknapp would do?
What?
Redknapp would go into the dressing room and just say to each player, "I think you're class. I think you're a top player. I've been watching you, mate. I love it when you get on your right foot. Get it on that right foot more often. You, son, how old are you? 21. Superstar." So you're right, Hugo. He'd give them confidence and make them believe that they're better than what they are. We'll get a couple of wins and then we're safe. That's what he does.
Hugo, just quickly, did you watch the interview of Frank after the game? That little 90-second one.
Are you talking about the post-match press conference or the post-game interview?
There was a little post-game interview.
I've not seen
TNT.
I've not seen the interview, no, but I've seen the post-match conference.
Okay, because I was just wondering, because he was asked, do you think this result and reaction will have any impact on your job security? And he said no. And I was wondering, looking at his face, I was wondering, did you believe him when he said no? But you haven't seen it, so
I don't believe him. I think he's just going through the motions. I mean, what else is he supposed to say in that situation? Yes, I'm going to be sacked. It's like,
or maybe you say no. Maybe he'll say we'll see if he's not sure. Yeah, I guess he.
I'm fucked.
Obviously he's going to say no. But whether I was going to think like whether we're looking at with his look. Sometimes you can tell with the look on your face.
Yeah.
But I don't believe. Yeah, but I don't think anyone believes what
He's got a
he
bit
said.
of a poker face, as Frank.
Well, he might genuinely think he is safe. He might genuinely think he's getting the Arsenal game. Maybe he is.
He got the Dortmund game after a bad
he got the
result.
Dortmund game after everyone thought he was going to
After
get
West Ham,
sacked.
wasn't it?
Everyone said even if he wins that Dortmund game, he's going, and that never happened, did it?
Oh, but I'm pretty sure after the West Ham game there was kind of talk of one more really toxic home game like that, and it might be it. And
Mate.
since then,
when was West Ham? Was it a Sunday or Saturday? It was on that Saturday night. All the hot rumours from a lot of
He's gone.
journalists saying
The
this
board
guy's
is split.
serious pressure. There's going to be a big meeting.
Yeah.
Like this guy's gone. And then there were even on. I remember I was at the training ground the next day. I remember me and Ben were at the training ground. We were expecting an announcement. We were expecting something to happen, and they were all saying, "Oh, even he might get the Dortmund game because it's a quick turnaround. But even if he wins that, they've already got an interim in plan and blah blah blah." Obviously, that never happened. But maybe they are keeping him. That might be a reality.
I think we're too close. We're 16th now, so you haven't even got that false security of like Leeds and Palace kind of sandwiching you from the drop zone. We're like literally touching the drop zone, and we're one game away from Forest, who are 17th.
Yeah, they're playing tomorrow. Yeah.
And we're obviously 5 points above West Ham. I think we're too close now.
So do you actually think they are going to sack him now? You think that we'll hear?
Does the Man United goal save him? Does that Man
Maybe.
United goal save him for one more game?
Shouldn't do, but
It shouldn't do, because if they're one game away, you just get rid of him. Do you know what I mean? And, but if you're asking me, do I think he's going to be there for the Arsenal game? I think he is, because I think the board has to hide behind him. They have to hide behind him, because if they don't, then they're just completely exposed to the fact that their 25-point appointment process, where they interviewed all these people, and that was wrong. Their strategy of building for the long term with all these different players, that was wrong, because we're in the same injury crisis again. All this stuff about the medical department, they've done so well to keep all these players fit. That was wrong again, because look at the injury crisis we're in again. Getting rid of Levy, changing the ownership structure is outdated. We need these sporting directors.
You know what I don't understand? If they're going to hide behind Frank, as we keep going down the league table and enter, we're in a relegation battle, you can't hide from that. No one can hide from that. So I don't understand what they think they're hiding behind Frank for. Because the league
also,
table, you can't hide from it.
And if they're going to hide behind him, at least sign him a couple players. At least give him one more starting 11 player.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to hide behind him,
Yeah.
then give him some players and then say, we've done our job. Let's hide. Let's hide now. Let's leave it to the manager. But they haven't even. They've just given him an 18-year-old kid who's not ready, clearly, because he could have come on today and Frank clearly doesn't trust him, even when we're chasing a game and there's nothing to lose. He doesn't even trust him then. They've given him one player to help him for the now with the situation we're in. They've not even given him a couple of shitty loans. They've not even done that. And they have the gall to sit there and hide behind him as if they've done their job, and now they need to just it's terrible. It doesn't make any sense to me. Cowardice would be signing a couple of bad loans and then hiding behind it. But they haven't even done that. They've just completely left him. They've just completely left him to hang and dry. And it's this mutual thing of like, okay, we're going to leave Frank in a job. Frank's happy with that because he gets to keep his job, and he's going to deflect and blame the injuries and blame all this stuff. But then he's also blaming the club. It's weird. It's a weird situation. It's a weird situation. I think he must be. I mean, gosh, Frank is a dead man walking, and I think he knows it. I think he knows it.
We say this every week.
I know, and he's still
say it every week.
Still here. But look, Hugo, appreciate you calling in.
Cheers,
mate.
lads. Cheers, guys.
Nice
I appreciate
you.
Appreciate you taking the time to talk to everyone.
Of course, mate. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Big up,
Really
Hugo.
Thanks for coming
All
on.
right,
And I'll
cool.
see you soon.